Okay, well, that was that.
I got you.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Crash Acting. This is Benjamin Mathis. I'm the founder of Crash Acting, and this is Stacy Solodkin with Beth Stein Agency. We're doing this again.
Yes.
And I'm so happy you're here. So this is going to be a conversation between us.
Yeah.
And we have a stack of cards from people who have asked questions. And we're just going to flip the cards and go.
Exciting.
We don't know what's going to happen. So let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
Jump right in. We've been talking about all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
we'll just jump right into the questions here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pick the first one. And I think you can answer it and then I'll take a shot at it. Or maybe it's for you. I don't know.
Amazing.
Let's see what's going on. Okay, so the first question. We're taught to say yes to every project and opportunity for fear of no being detrimental to our progress. How can we balance our personal limits and boundaries with this perceived industry pressure?
Such a good question. So there's so many reasons to say yes and reasons to say no. And again, we've talked about this before. Every actor is different. Everyone's on a different trajectory. Everyone's starting from a different place. So all of those factors enter into whether you discuss with your agent whether to say yes or to say no. So let's say you're just starting out and you don't want to do nudity. And that's something that means something to you. Or you don't want to eat meat. And that means something to you. Those are, I think, legitimate reasons to say no to a project. Now, if it's a really amazing project and Scorsese is directing and there's nudity, then what I would say to my actor is, well, let's read the script and let's see if this nudity is gratuitous. What you have to remember is a lot of times the agent is there, and even if you don't have an agent, if you have a manager, and even if you don't have a manager, at the time of booking, if there's ever nudity in a production, there's a nudity writer that specifically discusses what you are willing to do and what you aren't willing to do. And it goes into very small details. Like, I am willing to do side boob. I am not willing to show the nipple. I am willing to show the top of my butt, and we write it all out so that you are comfortable. And I guess why I'm bringing that up is that sometimes I find that actors say no way too quickly. Yeah. Instead of really investigating if there could be some sort of collaboration in the project. Yeah. So they just say no. No, I am supposed to go home for vacation on that date. Right. And I'm like, okay, wait. Before we say no, let's think of all the positives to auditioning for this. And if you were to get it, is there any chance that you might pause that vacation? Yeah. I always go back when I was acting. And I had a friend, and she was with a very high-level agent, and she just said yes. So she would be away, and if they got her an audition that she needed to be in the room for, because back then you had to be in the room for everything, she got on a plane because that was her job. And I think that's one of the things that has gotten lost in our business, is that actors don't think of the audition process as their job. Right. And it really is. You have to think of that as the job, not the booking. Yeah. The job is the audition process. Yeah. And the job is also to have as many people see you as possible, to have as many directors see your work as possible, to have as many casting directors become fans of you. And so if saying yes to something is going to do one of those things, that could be a reason to say yes. Yeah. Right? So I don't want people to feel pressured to say yes because they're afraid that something might happen to them in their career. I don't believe that to be the case. No. If something goes against a value, say no. But I always feel like my actors who said no, because maybe I sent them something that was horrible, but for the most part, I'm submitting on things that are legitimate, for legitimate things that are good things that could advance your career. And so I find that actors are too quick to say no. Yeah. And then what I would love for an actor to do in those cases is to say, hey, can we talk about this? Yeah. Be more open. and say, here are the reasons why I would like to say no to this, but I wanted to talk to you about it first.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way, instead of having anxiety about saying no. You use it as a moment to have a conversation. The agent gets to know you better. They get to know how you feel about things, which will help them submit in the future as well. And then also, the agent's going to tell you reasons why auditioning for this is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
And again, unless it's like something that's hard and fast, like nudity, and it says in there, if someone is not willing to do this, this, and this, don't submit. That's a definite out no.
Yeah.
You know, do not submit if the person will not eat a hamburger and they're vegan. Absolutely no. You know, so there's no one right answer to this.
No. I
I just think that yes or no to me should be a conversation.
That's so good. Yeah, that comes up to me. What I hear you saying is, and I'm realizing this is a conversation with an acting teacher and an agent. So this is like, I feel like it's like a wave colliding for something.
Yeah.
Because in my role as an acting teacher, I get asked a lot about this, that, or the other, and there is no answer to anything. And so it seems to me the question is not, should I say yes or no? It's what are you using to discern what's right for you?
Yeah.
And are you able to discern, should I do this? And do you have a filter of discernment to say, is this what I want to do? Whether it's legal or advances my career or in line with my values, or is it a risk I want to take? Because I think it's sexy to say no sometimes because I'm so busy or whatever it is, I'm so important. And no can quickly become a block. It can become a shield you use to protect yourself from risk.
Yeah.
And inherent in the word yes, acting teachers always say, take a risk, take a risk. A risk means yes.
Yeah.
Yes is always the risk.
Yeah.
And so while no is certainly important, especially if you know how to discern what's right for you, yes is where the growth happens. Yes is where the opportunities open up. Yes is where the unknown lives, which is what the no can protect you from if you're too quick to say no.
Okay, so I have another thing so I can give examples of where a no was the risk and it created growth, right?
Yeah.
So if you have done, let's say, 6 co-stars, and we have this kind of tape on you, and we don't need those credits on your resume, then saying no, I deserve more than that, and we wouldn't phrase it like that, but saying, you know what, I think it's time for me to stop saying yes to this thing that's coming in because I'm ready to go upward.
So that's saying yes to the guest star.
Right.
It's yes to the opportunity, no to the thing.
Yes. And
yeah,
we can
that's
get
so
into
good. That's so good.
Yeah, and there's a nuance
so good.
between, like, not every co-star is a bad co-star.
No,
so you take every piece of paper, and we've talked about this before, a piece of artwork that's come into you, and you discern from there. And so you work with your agent. I have said to many clients, we don't need this tape. I don't even like that the casting director sent this to you because I think it's beneath you, and I think we should say no. It's always the actor's choice, but I have said that to them because I don't think we need it. I don't want to waste them on this role for this show. This show is going to go on for another season. Let's wait. I know casting directors love you. Let's say no, right?
Yeah.
I have also had actors who I believe, and I've had this particular person for quite a while. She came to me when she was very young, and she was very sure of herself, of what she wanted to do and what she didn't want to do. And I believe she said no too often. But because she was so sure of her point of view, I let her say no.
Yeah.
And I believe her career is not where it would be had she said yes.
Yes to everything.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Not to everything.
Right.
But to most of the things she turned down, to me, there was not a good reason to turn it down.
There's a thing that I write about in my book, You the Career, about a well-considered no.
Yeah.
And what that is, that a well-considered no is not reactive. It's not, no, I don't want to. You go through pathways of discernment to decide. And it sounds like that client very much knew what her mission was, knew what her vision was. And so in saying no to the distractions, she's saying yes to her purpose and was clear about that. And that well-considered no, you might evaluate, sometimes I'll talk about 3 Ps, the people, the project, and the profit, something like, and you've got to meet 2 of those 3 or something. And so that pathway of discernment allows for the no to be well considered. And so it's like a it's like a sacred no. It's not a reactive no. It's not a,
Yeah.
it's not a, oh, I don't want to. It's not a protective no. It's a deeply considered, and especially if you have somebody like you who can offer a different point of view to help guide the actor to saying a well-considered no, which is really another form of yes to something bigger.
Yeah. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
It's yes, you never know. You still never know.
I feel like sometimes I have found that I have looked back because, I have this long career, and I'm sad for some of the no's that I think would have helped the actor.
Right.
Things that they said no to that I didn't agree with. Right. That I was like, wow, man, you would have.
Why do you think people say no? Why do you think that no shows up?
I feel like people say no. God, I wish I knew. I think there's all sorts of reasons. Some people think, this is too small for me. Or they think, I don't really like this character. Or I had one actor who would say to me all the time, anybody can do this role. They don't need me for this role. Anybody can do this role. I don't want to do a role that just anybody can do.
Right.
And then I've had that person that I'm talking about was very considerate, would read the script and then just decide, just doesn't feel right to me. And while I think that you're right that in this person's life journey, that decision may have been right for them. If I had been able to say to them, this could be the difference between you having an upward trajectory in this business and having the ability to make these choices later on when you have more power. Yeah. And if you say no, and I am here to service that no, but if you say no, my fear is that you are stopping the forward momentum that's happening. Yeah. And that could have a detrimental effect on your ultimate career, which is what happened. Right. And
there's an element of short-sightedness sometimes.
Yes.
To no. Yeah.
Yes. So again, no right answer, no wrong answer. Ultimately, the answer comes from deep within the actor, and hopefully they have people around them that will be honest with them. But still, I just talked to the manager of an actor 2 days ago, and she had to have the same conversation. It was an old client of mine, and she's like, he keeps saying no, and it's for reasons that are a little, have ego wrapped up in them.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's never, I don't want to say never, but it's always good to say yes.
Yes.
It's always good to say yes, unless it's, again, if you're
against your values or something.
Values, or you're higher up and they come in with something that's really really low, then that's good. There's obvious no's. Yeah. To me, those are the obvious no's.
Yeah, I do feel like most actors should be saying yes more often.
I do.
Just in general.
I do.
Yes.
Just yes.
Just yes. You said yes today.
I did. I just said yes.
That's the thing about yes. If we program our mind for yes, given the edges of against my values and against my worth, but in that middle ground, it becomes about listening for invitations. Yeah. Invitations to create with somebody, invitations to experience your life, invitations to move in your career, invitations to network or work with new people. If you start listening for invitations, then you start finding the right things to say yes to. Yeah. And you get probably 25 invitations a day. Yeah. I'm the worst. I'm like, you want to go out? And I'm like, no.
No, I know. I'm the same. Okay, but here's something else that this is like sparking for me, because I also feel like oh no, I lost it. Oh, here it is. Okay. So I feel like a lot of times the no is coming from, I ultimately don't want to do this project. They're rejecting the project completely when all it is an audition.
Right. So they're saying no to having booked it already or being
Right.
in the project or something.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be
Right.
in Sacramento for 6 months. And I'm like, nobody's offering you the job.
Right.
This is not an offer.
No.
This is a moment for you to show your work to a casting director who loves you for a project that you might actually fall in love with.
Right.
So let's say yes
Yeah.
and go down the line, because you might not even get a call back.
Right.
So I find that people shut the door because, but they think they don't understand what it is.
Right.
Like they're not getting that this is just an introduction.
Yep.
I say to my husband, who is a production designer, go to every meeting, even if it's for a film you don't want to do, because that director, A, might not choose you,
Yeah.
and B, is going to be doing other things.
Right.
So to me, you take every meeting.
Yeah.
To me, you take every audition. Again, unless you've been in this business for a long time and it's beneath you, or it's for something that's like porn
Against
or
your values.
whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, say yes to the meeting.
Yeah.
Always say yes to the meeting. There's always time to say no down the line. Say yes to the meeting.
That's so good. It's like yes to planting the seed.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, when people, oh no, I'm like, nobody's offering you the job.
Yeah.
Like,
We're not
why-
there yet.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
They're not, this is not an offer. This is an audition for you to do what you say you love to do, which is act this role today.
Yep.
I don't know. I get
That's
very
great.
opinionated about it.
That's what we need. That's what we need. Shall we do another one?
Yeah.
All right.
Is it my turn?
Go for it.
Okay. Okay, this is for you. Favorite memory of acting? Was there a jaw drop moment?
A jaw drop moment in acting.
Yeah.
Gosh, it seems like there was probably a bunch. There's many. Okay, the jaw drop. Okay, there's. Yes. Okay, wow. This puts me in my feels even as I think about it. So in 2004, my brother, who's a Marine, had been in the Battle of Fallujah, which was the heaviest fighting Marines had seen in 50 years or so.
Wow.
And they were predicting thousands of American casualties a day. And this was at the height of kind of the second wave of this last war in Iraq. And it was a really difficult time. Politically, it was difficult, and personally, it was difficult, and it was just a lot of stuff going on. And I was doing a production of The Lion in Winter at the Fulton Opera House in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is about 3 hours outside of New York. And so it was a really great job, and it was a wonderful cast and just a really great community. It's a thriving theater. It's the oldest continuously operating theater in America.
Wow.
Right. And my brother this would have been the Battle of Fallujah was in November, and this would have been early January.
Okay.
Mid-January. So he had only returned back to the States a few weeks after. And he flew out from California, where he was stationed, flew out to Pennsylvania to see me in New York, and then come out and see the show. And he did. And the whole cast knew he was coming. It was a big deal. I mean, it's weird. It feels very far removed, but it was a very big deal.
Wow.
And this was a different time, it feels like. Anyway, whatever. And he comes to the show, and we're going to do the show. And the whole cast is down. It's backstage, which was kind of down in this basement. And we could hear the monitors. And the artistic director, this guy who's since passed, named Michael Mitchell. Anyway, he was there, and we thought, what is he doing here? What's the artistic director of the show doing, or then at the theater doing? And he had walked backstage and said, "Hey, everybody, I'm just going to make an announcement." And we didn't know what it was. And so we're listening. We're sitting backstage listening to the monitor, and he goes on to stage and he's saying everything about, unwrap your candies and here's the exit. And he did not do this. We had a recording to do this. So we were thinking, what is he doing? Maybe the recording's broken, whatever. And then he says, we have a special guest tonight. And he points out, he says, at the time it was, I guess, Second Lieutenant Adam Mathis is just returned from Iraq. And I'm just like, but what we heard, because we were underneath the stage, the audience made a noise I've never heard, whoosh, and they stood up And they applauded for about 5 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. I get chills thinking about it.
Wow.
And we're all backstage just like, what is going on? This is not, none of us expected it. We're all kind of like, have our hands over our mouths. We're tearing up. We don't know what's going on. About literally 5 minute standing ovation. And that's a long 5 minutes, but it went on and on. And when they sat back down, we looked at each other. We made a joke. We said, well, no need for us to perform.
Yeah.
And the artistic director is coming back. He was on stage the whole time. And he's coming back, he's weeping, he can't hold it. He just walked past all of us, just uncontrolled. He did not expect it. And the show was, there's these special moments in the theater where the audience and the actors are indiscernible.
Yeah.
And something new has been created.
Yeah.
And the show itself that night, I remember it being a fine show, but the experience of the theater making, and for a moment, even though it's something as difficult and horrendous as the war at the time, it was something that brought this group of strangers together in a way that I've never experienced.
It's such a magical thing, the theater, because it's something that lives and breathes in that moment, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And so it's this special thing that only the people there, I can answer this question in several different ways, but I did a production of Oleana at Pacific Resident Theater, and it's a very controversial play. I've done several Neil LaBute plays, and Mammoth, sorry.
Mammoth, yeah.
And I've done
Neil
both.
LaBute, also controversial.
I've done both of them. I've done them both, so I'm getting them mixed up.
Right.
So I did Oleana at Pacific Resident, and there's a moment where it's towards the end, and the teacher is holding the chair above his head, above her, about to crash it down on her. And I hear someone in the audience stand up and say, "Do it."
Oh.
And to know that you can evoke that kind of response, that kind of visceral response from an audience member, it meant we were doing our job.
Yes.
It meant we were servicing the script. It meant everything. And even though I wanted them, I as an actor, even when I was playing these, because I also did Speed the Plow, another Mammoth at the Odyssey, and then I did a Neil LaBute play at Laguna, and everyone hates those women.
Yep.
And I would work really hard to find the good and the reason why they were doing what they were doing. I would almost play against what the writer wrote. So I had all kinds of reasons why they should love me and be on my side. But to have that kind of reaction, and I had it in the Neil LaBute play too, where people were talking about it afterwards in the bathroom, and
Which
I would
one
hear
was
them.
that? The Neil LaBute?
Oh,
Laguna. You've talked about this before.
yeah, it's the one where she The Shape of Things.
The Shape of Things. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So good, that play.
And I think I had like a 5 or 6 page monologue, and Neil LaBute came and he sat front row center. So I had to come out and talk to the audience, and there's
the playwright.
And I'm like, that was another jaw drop. But if I do it as from an agent point of view, right? I saw Meryl Streep in Shakespeare in the Park doing The Seagull with Natalie Portman, and I mean, like, that was mind blowing. I saw Death of a Salesman on Broadway. These are plays that I couldn't afford to fly to New York, but I just did it. I was an actor at the time, and I just flew because I had to see these people on stage. And then last night, watching The Bear.
So good.
Oh my God.
It's so good. First season or second?
Second season.
It's so good.
It's mind blowing. And so if you haven't watched that, you got to watch The Bear.
It's very good.
And
we're not being sponsored, by the way. But
no, not sponsored by The Bear on FX. But I again just captured by these performances that seemingly is this chaotic like mess, and it's done so beautifully. And so a lot of people invite me to the theater, a lot, and I say no a lot. because I'm so afraid of not having the jaw
Yeah.
drop moment. Anyway.
And it's so good because I love that you say you flew across the country to go see these shows. I think we understand this with athletes. At least I do. I haven't seen, for example, LeBron play.
Yeah.
And I'm not, whether you're a basketball fan or anything, when there's greatness out there, and it's something I want to go see. I'm like, I have to see him play. I'm not the biggest basketball fan in the world. I enjoy the game and I keep up, but I'm like, one of the greats of all time is playing, and you kind of just to go witness what greatness is.
Yeah.
To go see it while it's here. I
Yeah.
never saw Michael Jordan play.
Yeah.
I saw lots of great baseball players play, and it's, you go, wow, there's real greatness out there, and when you can identify it, to get in front of it and see it is an important thing to do.
As an inspiration.
Yes.
I think it's so important.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was outside the theater begging for a ticket. Like, I didn't even have a ticket.
For Death of a Salesman?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was begging. Does anybody? And it did the same thing for Seagull.
Wow.
Does anybody have a ticket? And I got tickets both for that.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
Here we go. Moving right along. Okay, so I'll ask you this, and maybe we can...
We can pass?
Well, we can pass, yes. How does a new actor create a reel? And then they follow up, is there any technique you find partial to or that you find most applicable to TV and film today? I don't know if they mean acting technique or what they mean necessarily, but so how does a new actor create a reel? What material is acceptable? And then is there any technique you find partial to or that you find most applicable to TV and film today?
So you get a reel by just doing the work, right? And the work of a beginning actor is to be submitting on all student films, on all the little indie things that you can submit yourself on, writing things, putting things up with your friends. When you are starting out and you don't have a reel, I think it's detrimental to try and make a reel. I hate those places where you pay and they write you a scene and you do it. Most of the agents I know do not like that.
Right.
And it costs like $500 or $600 or $700. What I think is you just be patient. And until you have a reel, you use your self-tapes. You use one or two of your self-tapes that you think, man, I just nailed that. And if you're trying to get an agent, then you send that.
Right.
And in the meantime, the way that you grow as an actor is you start doing small productions, small short films, and you start amassing a reel that in the future you will throw away.
Right.
This is not, you don't try to make the best reel you can because it's going to be a shitty reel. Your first reel is going to be a shitty reel unless you just came out of school and you got a great agent and they got you a great guest star spot right off the bat or a huge indie film, and then you have this amazing reel. Usually doesn't happen. You start out doing auditions that 10 years later you wish you had a second shot at because it was too early and you weren't ready. You watch back your reel from 10 years ago and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I had that on my reel, So in the beginning, you start from where you're at. And if you don't have a reel, you just say, I don't have a reel.
Yeah.
People say, can I see your reel? I don't have a reel yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to send you one of my self-tapes, right? And in the meantime, you start to book work. In the beginning, and people will say, well, I'm submitting, but I'm not getting any auditions. That's feedback. Maybe my pictures aren't right. Maybe, I'm not ready yet. Maybe the universe is telling me something.
I have to pause you because what you just said is so brilliant. You submit, you're not getting auditions, and that's feedback.
Yeah.
That's decidedly different than submitting, not getting auditions, that's rejection.
Yeah, no, it's feedback.
It's feedback. That's such a great way to see it because then everything that's happening is contributing to your growth.
Yeah.
You're not being rejected. You're just being given feedback.
Right.
That's so good.
Silence is feedback. You're submitting to hundreds of agents. You haven't gotten any feedback.
Yeah.
That is feedback. I say, listen to the silence.
Yeah.
So, and then look inward. What can I do differently? Because if you're just continuing to send out the same stuff, and if somebody says, well, but I don't have anything new, well, then you should be submitting.
Yeah.
Submitting to more short films. You should be in class, growing.
Yeah.
It's all feedback. You might not be ready yet.
Yeah. That's great.
Technique is different for everyone. And you just have to, I say, you find out what classes are recommended by most people. I think it's always good to go to classes that a lot of people in town know the teacher. And you audit. As many people that will let you audit. As many people as you can find that go to that class, talk to them. And then you take whatever one you fancy, right? And here's another thing. I find that actors think that a decision is irreversible.
Yeah.
So it stops them from making the decision because they want to make the right one.
Right one, because it's permanent.
Yeah. And if you go to the class for a month and you're like, nah, probably wasn't for me, then you just go to a different class.
Go somewhere else. Yeah.
You go to another one. So I find that a lot of ways actors stop themselves is they're trying too hard to get it right. And so if you just go, oh, that looks interesting, just go there.
Yeah.
Say yes and go there.
Yeah.
And I always, if I find I just did a consult with an actor and I watched all their reels, I watched all their self-tapes, and they felt very like, I felt like somebody had told them to be still and they felt boxed in. And I'm like, you need Meisner. Because this person just needed to like break out and go dive deep.
Yeah.
And so, I recommend Meisner a lot for people like that. But otherwise, I'm just like, get into a good scene study that scares you.
Yeah.
I want you to go to a class that scares you.
Yeah. That's really great. The best technique is to live at the edge of that experience in the room that scares you a little bit, that feels like it's taking you into a place that you had not expected to go or something. Because at the end of the day, and this happens a lot in our classes, they might ask what I teach or what technique do I teach, and it's difficult to answer. I can articulate it, but I don't teach the name of another teacher. And because too often we will preference the technique over your relationship to the technique.
Yeah.
Because if you just adhere to a technique, regardless of what it is, you might mistake the technique for acting. Instead of the technique is giving you access to a deeper version of yourself that you might act more truthfully through. And Meisner's work is so good at that because it's taking you in here. And all of the great teachers were taking you in to go back out. And if all you see is technique, it's like calling yourself a musician because you can play a scale. Like there's something, it's your relationship to the technique, your relationship to the music. And for that, what you're saying is so true. It's where do you find a home in a class, a scene study class, or whatever kind of class it is, that you can be a little scared and feel safe enough to risk and have fun and enjoy yourself and find out what inside of you any technique may reveal to us. And one of my favorite ways to differentiate that is that we create with a technique, or we create through a technique, but not with one, to say.
I have a really great answer for this, I think, because I think about your path as an actor the way I think about, let's say, religion.
Yeah.
And I like to call it mosaic, because you pull from different things and you create your own patchwork of a mosaic of a career.
Yeah.
And you can do that with technique too. You can go here and learn this. You can go here and learn this. And you can pull from what works for you and what doesn't, you let it go. And then it becomes this unique technique to you.
Yep. That's so beautiful. And just like religion, one thing we have to be careful with as acting teachers is that just like a religion, the technique can become the dogma.
Right.
And you end the beauty of the process. And so that's something I'm always aware of. It's a critique I offer my colleagues, because if we just teach what was taught, and religion is such a good parallel to that, because if we just teach what we were taught, nothing evolves, nothing grows. And so these great acting teachers like Stanislavski and the like, were in themselves evolving their work, and then they died, and then we tend to pick up there and just copy paste it over and over, and it becomes the dogma that we do. And so now you're doing the technique right or wrong. And that doesn't work so well in religion.
No.
It doesn't work well in acting technique either. It removes the art out of it, the humanity out of it.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's so good. Okay, was it my turn?
I don't know.
Your turn.
I think it's your turn.
No, yours, because I did the real question.
Oh. Okay. Oh, I need the glasses. How do you proceed or progress when you don't feel like you're good, for lack of a better word, at this acting thing?
Okay. So the first two things that come to my head, that the question is that you don't feel like you're good.
Yeah, how do you proceed or progress when you don't feel like you're good at this acting thing?
Well, this word feel is very interesting because sometimes feelings are real but aren't true.
Yeah.
And it feels real. I feel like I'm not good at this. But that may or may not be true. And so we have to honor the feeling that I don't feel good at this. And then surround yourself in community, which I would consider as a place where it's safe to be seen as good. And if you can be seen as good and be mirrored back as good in this community that you're in, then eventually you may come to feel you are good, because you may not feel as you are. And so if you believe that you are not good, and you feel as if you're not good, the first thing is to differentiate what feels real and what is true. And that's hard to do if you're not in a community being mirrored back that you're good.
Yeah.
Because how would you know otherwise? And then, of course, this idea that you can be good or bad. There's a thing that we like to say in the studio about being in your isness. So that you're not the good actor or the bad actor, you're the actor who is.
Right.
Because all of us feel not good and all of us feel good. And so it's like you're confusing the waves for the ocean.
Right.
What a deep and profound question that we can speak to, but is best explored through experience.
Yeah. I mean, how do you proceed when you don't feel you're good at this acting thing? I would say, sort of along the lines of what you said, you will always feel that way. At every point in your career. There's at some point you're going to be like, oh, I suck.
Yes.
And my thing is, so suck royally. Just fuck it up. Just fuck it up. I tell all my actors, do the audition the way you think will be good. And then I want you to do one for me and say, fuck it.
It'll be bad.
Just dare to be bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of the best art comes out of someone just fucking it up.
Yes, yeah.
You know, so if you're in that moment, which everyone gets to, then I say dive into it.
Yeah.
Oh, I might not be good at this. Okay, let's see how bad I can get. And just do it really badly. Because if you're questioning whether you're good or not, you're sort of stuck in this middle ground. And nothing happens in the middle ground.
Right.
It only happens up here or down here.
Right.
So if you can't get to up here, then go down there and see what gets inspired from that.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. It is that it's this thing that I'm not good and I'm supposed to be this thing of good, instead of going in the total opposite directions. I feel like I suck, so that's where I'm going to start from. I'm going to work from this, and I'm going to go all the way down this path and see what's down there.
Why can't you always be a beginner?
Right, of course.
Because we all are.
Yeah.
So I'm an artist. So I start doing something new and I suck at it. And I just keep sucking at it until I get better. So if it's in your heart to do it, then just keep doing it and you will get better. There's a second part here. How do you stop trying to get it right? Be that for the casting director or even yourself.
How do you stop trying to get it right? Well, I don't, I guess so many of us are just trying to arrive at some form of right, some form of acceptance. We want to be accepted. We want to be seen. We want to be seen as good. All of these things that matter. And on one level, these things are real. And on another level, the very thing you're trying to be is keeping you from the thing that you are. And so to stop trying to be right is to commit to being true.
Yeah.
And to aligning what's happening to what I'm expressing and arriving in your isness. And when you do this, then acting ceases to become transactional.
Yeah.
It starts to become transformational. the sun sets and I doubt it's worried if it's setting right.
Yeah.
You know?
I would also say that if you're trying to get it right, that means you're watching yourself
Yeah.
and you're not really listening
Right.
to what's happening. A lot of the best acting comes when afterwards you're like, oh God, I don't even remember. I think I sucked. And you're like, no, it was great.
Great.
It was so good.
Yeah.
But they don't remember what they did
Yeah.
because they were so in it.
Mm.
So I would say just stop and listen.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to stop trying to get it right is to just know, were you in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Just be in the moment.
Yeah, that's so good. There's an element of presence there that, and I would say a lot of actors, I certainly wasn't in my acting classes. I was never taught how to evaluate my work. And so if I can't evaluate my own work, then I have no real barometer to determine if what I'm doing is good or bad or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I might just go off of my initial feeling, I didn't like it or whatever, but and then I look to someone else to tell me whether it was good or bad. And so in a way I've been stripped of my own artistic autonomy because I wouldn't know good from bad. I couldn't imagine a chef who doesn't taste their own food as they go along.
Yeah.
And so to teach the actor how to evaluate their work, how to determine in their bodies, how to determine in their process what is true and what is outside of their truth, I think is something that we need to spend more time on, because otherwise we just throw spaghetti and hope we ask somebody else, how did it go? How did it go? How did it go? And now I am playing for whether the casting director liked it or whatever, because I don't have a sense of it in my own self.
Okay, so what about this? There is no right.
I guess, right?
There is no right.
Absolutely.
So if you are truly going in and using yourself as the guide, everyone's right is going to be different. And I would say that the casting director doesn't know what's right. They have an idea in their mind of what the character could be. But if you come in with something so unique and singular to you, that's going to turn out to be right because they're like, whoa,
Never seen that.
I didn't think of that. That's amazing for this role. So really it is about not trying to do something that someone else will think is right, but do what is truly unique and singular to you. And that is what's right for you. There is no right answer.
At all.
No.
And I get asked this a lot as a teacher. Was that good acting? Was that good? Was that, somebody tell me what's good. And I don't like that question because there's a part of me that knows what I like.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's good. But
Yeah.
I also know this is irrelevant because unless you're doing it for me, I don't know what's good or what isn't. But one thing that helps me decipher as a teacher and has helped me even as an actor is to think of truth as a measure of distance, so that something that is very true is close to me. The performance was close to me. Something that's false, my performance was distanced from me. And it makes sense to me to talk about this in terms of a musician or something. I hear, every time I say this, Joni Mitchell comes to mind because it seems like everything she sang was right here for her, right here. I'm hitting my mic, was right here. And so it's true. And there are some artists where what they create is distance from the one who created it. And the greater the distance between who created and what it is they created, the less true it is.
Right.
When there's no distance between you and the thing you've created, it's true.
Right.
Now, whether that's what the director's looking for at the moment or whether that's right, now we've thrown that whole conversation out the window.
It's out the window.
Out the window. If I play Hamlet, is it so close to me that by watching Hamlet, you've learned about me in a different way? Because only I can bring something to Hamlet. They've been doing Hamlet for 400 years. Why watch it again, except for we come to watch me? This is why the actor's name is often billed above the character's name, because we're going to see Denzel play it.
Yeah.
We're not going to see Hamlet. We'll just read it.
Yeah.
We're there to see what the person's bringing to the role. And so truth as a matter of distance to me helps to circumvent the kind of right or wrong thing. And then the pursuit for the actor, which is a lifelong pursuit, is how do I work in such a way that everything is close to me that I do? And that's the lifelong practice,
Yeah.
Yeah. If you get there. And people get there. Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, come on. Who probably has sometimes woken up and thought, I can't get this right.
Yes.
I'm sure she's sat at her, piano or whatever and been writing and today sucks.
Nothing's coming.
You know,
today.
I say that to actors all the time when they have a bad day and they're like, I didn't get it right. I I sucked. I'm like, you know what? Meryl Streep has those days too.
Yes.
Meryl Streep has those days too. Everybody does.
And when you have them and you speak from them, then it's true.
Yeah.
What you speak is true.
Yeah.
And maybe you throw it away, but at least you're practicing the expression of truth.
Yeah.
Which is a much deeper practice than the practice of getting it right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, your turn.
Oh, gosh. That's good. Okay. Oh.
Oh.
If you had the power to shape the trajectory of the industry, what direction would you have it move towards?
Well, if I had the power to shape it, I would completely revamp the SAG contract. I would have diversity and inclusion be a normal, regular thing. And, I would give a lot more power to people who maybe aren't in the positions of power at the moment. I would have a lot more women, female directors. There's so many ways to go with that. I think that we're so far from that, which is why, and also with the SAG contract being under negotiation, I have just watched this industry devolve into such a mess that it's very disheartening. Yeah. And I hope that we can turn it around. I hate to be the downer. I don't see it happening. I feel like I got out. I was divine timing. Yeah. I feel like when I decided it was time for me to step away, I was like at the height, and I didn't even know this was about to happen. And then this happened. I was like, whoa, the timing was perfect. So I do see, like, when I see something like The Bear last night, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's beautiful. I see some of the most beautiful work being done. Jennifer Esposito, just against all odds, wrote and directed and produced her own feature, and she's being hailed like the female Scorsese. Yeah. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, I want more of that. Yeah. What I would love to do is for people to be paid fairly, and for the people in suits who are mostly white to die off. I don't know. I want the new regime to be diverse and inclusive, and to have our industry reflect what society really is. Yeah.
I think that's a great point, because everything you're bringing up, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the problems we see in our industry are the problems we see in our world, and in many aspects of our world, in all businesses in our world, because there can be a sense that it's just this industry that's messed up, or just this industry and this industry is reflective of all industries. It's a product of the capitalistic system and the society that we all live in and are constantly trying to improve. Yeah. And so what you're bringing up is very important. It seems to me that, as with everything, we want it to become more creative, more inclusive, more welcoming, more loving, all of these things, because there is still good in it.
There is.
There's a lot of good.
A lot of good.
And there's a lot of good in our world, in our society. And so it's like holding what's beautiful about it, and from that center, building out so that more of that happens. And
as soon as I said, I want it to be more reflective of our society, I was like, well, it sort of is, because what's happening is it is reflective, actually.
Right. I heard what I thought you meant, like reflective of the people in our world.
That's what I meant.
But you're right.
And then I was like, but it is reflective, because in our society, the middle class is getting squeezed, and in our industry, the middle class is getting squeezed. Yeah. So the middle class is really being squeezed out.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It is. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
This is such a good question for you. What does it really mean to be vulnerable?
That is a good question. So I think vulnerable is a beautiful word. And for actors, we're told a lot of times, be vulnerable, be vulnerable, be vulnerable. I was taught, of course, I wasn't good at being vulnerable.
Wow.
I think a lot of guys hear that, you're not good at being vulnerable or something. And so maybe we equate being vulnerable with crying or some sort of emotion or something. And sure, but it helps me to think of vulnerability as a geography in my body.
Ooh.
As opposed to a concept that I'm not or that I am. And so when I think about vulnerability as a geography in my body, I think about it physically, and this is just one way to think about it, is that if it's in my body physically, then I can identify it and I can work from it. I can speak from it. I can allow it to be seen. There's an analogy I talk about all the time, but it makes sense to me. If you've read The Hobbit or seen the film, the dragon at the end, the dragon Smaug, is going to destroy the townspeople, and Bilbo, the Hobbit, realizes that there's a missing scale in the dragon's skin. And that's where they have to shoot the arrow to bring down the dragon. In other words, his vulnerable place was where the shield was missing. And so it's a part of the body that is not as protected. Or maybe it's a part of the body you want to protect. But that when I see it as a geography, I have access to it. I can work from it. I can nurture it. I can see it. I can understand it differently than if it's just a concept or some thing that I'm not doing or should be doing.
Yeah.
So I find it helpful to see it as a vulnerability as a location in my body, and I can work from that.
Yeah, and I also feel like actors get very caught up in the emotion, the emotional quality that they want to show, instead of really diving into the story and taking us on a ride. Because if you're truthful in the moment of what's really going on, whatever happens is the vulnerability.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So I feel like if I watch someone who is trying to cry, and yes, they get the tears out, but I'm not affected because of what I just watched them work themselves up to do. Instead of, sometimes I just get so lost in a story, I'll start crying. They're not even crying. I'll start crying because of what they're saying, and the way that they're saying it is so beautiful. And so being vulnerable is just, to me, being open.
Yes. Yeah. That's wonderful. It is an opening. It's whether it's an opening in the body, an opening in the story, your availability. It's like this opening upon opening upon opening, and then being seen in that openness as it feels like a vulnerable thing. I'm out of control. I don't know. I feel that I can be affected. I can be moved.
Yeah. What do you think about people, because there are scenes that call for someone who has the facility to cry.
Yeah, of course.
And it's because in the story, they're in this moment that's extremely vulnerable, and you must cry. And sometimes I feel like, and this is going to be horrible to say, but there are actors who are good at that, and there are actors who are not. And
There's people who are good at crying and people who are not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you think about that?
So if I'm talking to actors, this is what I say, acknowledging that some people are just good at it. But here's what I would say. First step is when you see they cry in the script, immediately the actor freaks out.
Right. You got to mark that out.
You got to mark that out. And you've also got to consider that the writer took the opportunity, likely, to consider what reaction they had. And so the writer may have thought this character could scream, they could hit, and they landed on cry. So the writer got to consider other responses. And so I would ask the actor to cross out cry and consider there's lots of reasonable reactions to what's happening.
Right.
And usually that opens up, that takes the pressure off a little bit. And then what I think is that it isn't, as you've said, barring people who are just good at it, it isn't about the emotional expression of crying. There's lots of types of crying. There's lots of things here. But ultimately, it's about the actor cultivating the inner condition that may result in crying.
Yeah.
Because I can't work the cry. I'm going to squeeze out a tear. But
right.
Crying, it's like sweating. Like something's got to happen for it to show up.
Right.
And so one thing that I've offered an actor once on set was, you know how you're at a wedding or a funeral, we'll stick with wedding, and you're speaking highly about somebody and it can bring you to tears. There's a softening in your heart.
Yeah.
And so she was on set and she had this big crying moment, and a particularly gifted actor, but she was very nervous about the moment. It's one of those moments, it has to happen. So I said, well, listen, we just have to soften you. So what if you spend time saying nice things about people to them, literally, to the crew, honestly, and spend time really reflecting back to them what you love about them, having worked with them for this time. Because you're a good actor, you can squeeze out the tears, but what we want to do is create the condition within which you may cry. And so she said she did that. And that on the day when the crying had to happen, her body had been sensitized already. So she was able to receive from the other actor the thing that makes the character cry.
Yeah.
And so it's about thinking, what would cause me to cry and how do I work on that and not be tempted by the result of crying?
Right. And then I also just want to say that some of the most profound things is when you see someone try not to cry.
Oh, for sure.
You know, so it's not I can watch someone like bawl their eyes out and I'm not affected at
Not
all
really, yeah.
because it was just this manufactured thing that they were able to do versus someone who really has the moment to moment reaction to what's happening and they're trying desperately to hold themselves together.
Yeah, right.
That's such a beautiful thing to
So
watch.
beautiful.
You know, and I think that that comes from exploring in class and figuring out how to, you know, access those parts of you.
Yeah.
Because what I notice mostly about auditions is that people are either riding the surface of them or they're right under the surface. You know, they understand it. They're good actors. They know what's going on. They're hitting all the marks and stuff. But the people who really dive down deep to a point where there's level after level after level. They're feeling this, but they're covering over this because of this, and this is how they feel, and this is how they don't want anybody else to know how they're feeling.
Yep.
It just creates this whole like web structure of fabric that you're just like, whoa, what is happening?
Right, right.
Like the bear.
Yes, all these layers of complexity.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, my turn. At what point do you keep trusting your reps will do something, or at what point do you leave them? This is the question.
Yeah.
When do you break up?
When do you break up with your agent? It's, again, there is no one right answer for this. And what I find mostly is newer actors think that when they get an agent, everything is going to happen right away. And so if something doesn't start churning in the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months, they're like, I need to leave and go to someone else. And that's not the case. And so it's hard for me to answer this question because there's so many, you know, questions I have to ask back to understand.
Right.
But I would say if you have no communication, you write to them and you're not receiving anything back. If you are not getting any auditions at all, and you have very respectfully said, what can I do to help you, to help us get me out more? Do I need other tools? Do you want me to take a different class? Do I need to recut my reel? That kind of thing. And you receive no feedback. And you've written to them multiple times and there's no feedback. I would say it's time to go.
Yeah.
You know, if they have made some sort of egregious error where someone sent them an audition for you and your agent forgot to give it to you, or, you know, something like that, or they, you know, they don't pay you your checks on time, things like that, or they yell at you. I had an actor tell me the other day, my agent yells at me all the time. I'm like, that's an agent to leave, right? Yeah. Or do they get you out all the time? Or are you working all the time and you just have to like hold the phone away from you? Maybe you stay, right? So you have to kind of, it's a balancing act, right? Are they doing well for you, but they're a jerk?
Yep.
then maybe you wait until you get enough juice that you can move because you don't want to be repped by a jerk.
Yeah.
Right? But I find that most of the people who ask me this question are asking the question too soon, and they aren't listening to the feedback and reflecting it back on themselves and figuring out what they need to do to make this relationship fruitful.
Yes.
But you have to remember there are a lot of agents out here who are not effective.
Yeah.
And even if they're effective for someone else, they might not be effective for you. So usually you find that out within the first 6 months.
Yeah.
I could usually tell whether I was right for someone within a month or two. I'd be like, oh, and that's when I would say, okay, we need to redo something. Like we need to revamp because my clients were getting auditions, but they weren't.
Right.
So my packages are getting opened. They're looking at my clients and they're not picking them. Why is that?
Right.
Let's figure it out.
Right.
And then if we retool and it's still not happening, I would say it's time for you to move on.
Right.
Like I want to be the agent for you, but I'm clearly not.
Right.
You know, but if you don't have, most agents aren't good at that. I was really good at dropping people because I was letting them go.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of actors are afraid to let go. They're afraid to let go of the agent because they're afraid they won't get another one. Yeah. But what I would say to someone, if you've been with someone for, let's say, a year and you've received no auditions, or you've received one audition or two auditions or even 5 in a year, right? And I would question the relationship and I would say, maybe it's time to go.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really good. And that word relationship is so true. Because
Yeah.
that's what it is.
That's what it is.
And very often if a relationship's not working, the first place we need to look is here. The first place we want to look is there. And it can be both, of course. But yeah.
It's always both.
It's always both.
There is no relationship where one person is completely unhappy and you're not having sex and the other person doesn't know.
Yeah, no, it's not how it works.
Everybody knows whether there's sex happening or not.
Yes.
So
yes.
the agent knows they have not gotten you any auditions.
Yes.
And if they're not writing you back, the agent knows they're
know.
not writing you back.
Yeah.
So, you know, but there's another, like, if I was to think of someone who was like writing me, why am I not getting auditions? I might stop writing them back because there's too many emails.
Yeah.
I'm like, enough already.
Yeah.
Like I can only answer the same question, you know. Also right now it's very slow. Very slow. So you also have to know the seasons. Like there is an ebb and flow. It gets busy, it gets slow, it gets busy, it gets slow. And actors tend to forget that in the slow periods. And they all freak out. And they blame the agent. I'm not getting any auditions. And I think you always have to come back to, I am exactly on time. I am in the right place in this moment. Now, maybe the decision is to change, right? But right in this moment, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And the roles that are for me are not going to pass me by.
Right.
So if there was a role that you were right for, you would have been called in for it.
Right.
But if somebody else got it, it was for them. But I wasn't up for it. Well, maybe your pictures aren't great.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not with the right agent. Maybe you're not trained enough yet. Maybe you aren't seasoned enough. Whatever the reason.
Right.
You have to really, truly believe that everything that is for me is coming to me and will be there for me. I just need to keep putting myself out there in the path of it.
That's so good. And that's so hard to do, but that's
so hard. So hard.
Good.
So hard.
Okay, a couple more questions.
Yeah.
A couple more.
I think
your turn.
No. I asked, what does it mean to be vulnerable?
Oh, yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, no. Is that right?
We just did trusting your reps.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Okay. What do you look for in an acting studio?
Well, let's see. So I'll be biased, obviously, because I can only speak about not what I'm looking for, but what I've created, which was what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So for me, in an acting studio, what I'm looking for is a place where I can deepen my practice. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a place that'll get me a job, because that's not what acting studios do. I'm not looking for a place that will check a box for an agent or somebody who says good. I'm not looking for a place that honestly, I'm not looking for a place that looks good on my resume. I'm looking for a place that fits well in my heart and my soul. Because I want to, the way that I see it, I want to stay somewhere and go as deep as I can within that practice and in that community and deepen the relationships, the people that I'm with, and really learn about myself and my practice and cultivate a deepening sense of community. And it preferences depth over the breadth of the work. And so in these places, I find that there's some things that are similar. In our studio, I'm very clear about the difference between teaching, coaching, and directing. That some of my teachers really would have been directors. They would direct the scene, they'd make the scene better, but the actor doesn't always get better. Some of my teachers would have been coaches, kind of guiding me towards a result, and that's fine, but didn't always empower me. It felt like I needed them. In a studio where there's a teacher teaching, this I find to be a much more individual relationship, more about developing the actor than training them. It's about deepening their practice and not giving tips or anything. If you go to an acting studio and they promise you a job, or they go to an acting studio and they're banking on their alumni, I worked with this famous person. If they've got to use names to get you in, if they've got to promise you transactions to get you in, then there's no teaching happening. There's no practice deepening. The community can become very competitive. In our studio, there's no hierarchy, so there's no master class to get to, and that's very nice. It keeps everyone working together. It removes the competition out of the way, and so creativity can flourish. So I find that an acting studio is kind of like finding your yoga studio. It's not, there's so many good ones. It's just, where can I deepen my practice?
Yeah.
And where can I find a place that feels like home in the midst of this hustle that feels safe but challenging, scary, inspiring. And so after that, it's about what's it cost and does it smell good?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah, I also like for people to be aware that a studio that is constantly giving you the sales pitch and like calling and there are places that are, that's a red flag.
Big red flag.
Places that where it feels like there's all these rules and you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do. That's a little scary to me. Something that's a little more culty.
Yes.
A place that doesn't feel like you can branch out and go somewhere else to learn another thing is a little scary to me. People sort of feel like they get locked in.
Yeah.
Again, this kind of cultivating this culty atmosphere where
it can become very myopic.
Where the teacher walks in and everyone's clapping and it's very odd to me. Yeah. I'm curious to know what you think, because some actors talk to me and the classes that they bring up are with casting directors. And I'm like, that's an interesting class to take, but to me, that's not where you go to learn to act.
Yeah, I do have opinions about that.
I bet you do.
I don't get paid to cast. And so an acting teacher, a casting director teaching would be outside their wheelhouse.
Right.
I would say that's not what they're trained to do, and that's not what their expertise is. Doesn't mean that they can't teach you something. It doesn't mean that they don't have valuable insights. I would never ask the critic to teach me how to cook. You see, and so I think that it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to deepen your practice, then I think the role of an acting teacher is decidedly different from a director, coach, or casting director. Seek out a teacher who is developing their practice as well.
Yeah.
And so, when a casting director teaches, I hear casting director teaching.
Yeah.
In quotes.
Yeah.
Casting director sharing experience and insight about casting, but I don't know what would qualify them to teach the actor.
Yeah, I mean, to just expound on what you just said, I feel like their value is teaching how to do the audition in a better way.
Yeah.
This audition would have made it pass through the producer.
For sure.
This audition wouldn't. And in a sense, you are teaching an acting class in a way. It's more of an audition class versus, because somebody who I was consulting with said, well, I'm in this person's class. And I'm like, well, that's great. But I mean, you need to go into a scene study class.
Training type of
you don't need to be in a class with a cat. You can, that's great. that's an audition class. I need you to be in a scene study class where you're really diving deep and breaking yourself open.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen in a casting director workshop class.
The other thing about casting director workshops is they can become the culture of it can become very competitive, or some people may be there to meet the casting director.
They're all there to meet the casting
not to deepen their work.
Yeah, no, they're all there to meet the casting.
And that creates a certain culture, and I think it perpetrates what's wrong about our industry. If we want to change our industry, then we've got to change how at least from my chair, I want to change how we cultivate the actors. And if we cultivate a classroom that is hierarchical, where I'm trying to win the favor of the casting director every week, and maybe if they like me, they'll get the job. We're implementing what's wrong with the industry. This kind of get it rightness.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different view of the casting director workshops because when I was an actor, I got work from them. I think that it's a tool.
Yeah.
I think it can be used as a tool. I do not think it's a place to go to deepen your craft.
No.
It is a place that once you are ready and you are well trained, you go there to show your work to someone that maybe your agent can't get you in for.
It's a beautiful use of them. Yes, that's exactly right.
To me, that's the use. That's the use.
That's the use.
And what I find is that people go too early, and then they go and they use it as class because it might be a little bit cheaper because it's a one-off, or because it's like a week class or a 3-week, once a week, 3-week thing, and it's cheaper. And I'm like, yes, but you're not deepening your craft there. You're not learning to act. And so it's like they're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
That's
a good differentiation, because when it's a one-off or just a 3-week thing, then it doesn't cultivate the toxicity, because we're there for a short amount of time.
Right.
And it's a transaction, it's a relational thing. But when you're working with a casting director for an extended amount of time, you do run the risk of, but even if you're working in another studio that's very top down, you run the risk of cultivating that toxicity, because we're trying to get to the top.
Right.
Get the approval of the teacher or whatever.
Right.
And that translates and bleeds into how we've created this industry, where the actors trying to get the approval of everybody. We're teaching that in the studios if we structure ourselves that way. And so to deconstruct that is to begin to foster a different industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have one more.
One more question.
Oh, no, there's 2 more. Do we decide which one to answer?
Let me see, what's that one?
I think I like that one better.
Yes, this is a really good one.
Okay,
this is our last question. We have to do it quickly. Okay. I don't know whether to quit or keep going. Any advice?
Again, there's no one answer for this. And certainly I quit. And I quit because I like air conditioning. So I was working. I was working. I certainly was making my health insurance, and but I did see the struggle. And I think that that's a very personal thing, that if you find it hard to embrace the craft as a love of an art, and the business side is detrimental to your mental health, and you can't seem to switch it back over to remembering why you love to act, I think it might be time for a break.
Right.
And sometimes you don't have to quit. You just have to take a break. You just have to step away. Certainly every time I tried to quit, I booked a job, right? So there was something about the letting go of it all that helped me be free in the room, right? And I feel like sometimes actors think, well, I either have to stop completely or I have to go full force. And I'm like, no, there's a whole world in between there where you can say, doing this is not good for my mental health. So I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to go to class once a week. I'm going to stop, thinking I have to do something every single day. I'm going to I feel that your health is the most important. And that includes your mental health. And I believe that being happy in your life should be of paramount. And if you find yourself hinging your happiness on whether or not you get a job, it's time to step away a little bit, because you're you're placing your importance on something that is never going to fulfill you.
Yeah.
And you will continue to be traumatized.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about, are you happy? Can you live a fulfilled life while you pursue this craft?
Yeah.
And even if you take a step out, but you still are pursuing the craft, can you be fulfilled in your art in that way? Can you just really let go of this need for validation through getting booked?
Yeah.
And can you just relax into the craft of it?
Yeah.
That's when you know. If I see someone who is being traumatized or is really upset in their life, I always say it's time for a break.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
Because what I hear you saying is, depending on what it is you want to quit, do you want to quit the obsession with getting it right, quit the need for validation, quit the putting your worth in your job, quit adhering to the length of your resume, quit those things. And when those things become the thing, it's time to quit so that you can return to the thing you love about this.
Yeah.
And this bleeds into what we were talking about before, that maybe the job of the actor, and therefore maybe the acting studio, is how do I remain in love with this thing?
Yeah.
That when I was 5 years old, or maybe I was in high school, whenever you were bit by the acting bug, how do you live in such a way that you remain faithfully in love with this thing? And if you become obsessed with the minutia of getting it right, or all the stuff, if that becomes the thing, the love you had once begins to dwindle, and then it's time to reevaluate.
Listen, there's Simon Cowell, right? On
Yes.
American Idol, who will just say, you need to pick another profession.
Yeah.
And I have had those moments in my head when I have seen certain people come across, and this is probably going to be wildly controversial, and I probably shouldn't say it, and people will get upset with me, but I don't think anyone would ever really tell you the truth. No one's going to be Simon Cowell. I think I could, but then I could get it wrong too. Right? So someone could prove me wrong. I was in class with Jennifer Lopez, and I remember a casting director saying, she doesn't have it, she should just quit. And look at her now, right? So I feel like I have definitely seen people knocking their head against the wall over and over and over, not improving year after year, right? Not my clients certainly, but people who I've seen. And I'm like, man, that person should give it up.
Right.
They should just go do something that makes them happy, because clearly this is not for them. And I think sometimes you do want to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So there are people who don't ever book, right? Again, it's feedback, right? And it's years. I'm talking years. And you can't get an agent, or you get a really shitty agent, and you rarely go out. But you're so attached to calling yourself an actor, and you're not really in class. You're not really deepening the craft. You're just, you know what I mean? You're just, you're attached to this label of actor, and you don't want to let it go because you've been doing it for so long. I'm like, sometimes I wish somebody would just say, would you just be Simon Cowell? And I could go and X them. Just say, no, really, really, go be happy doing something else. But nobody can tell you that. Because it's your life.
You have to decide, yes.
Yeah.
It's like telling your friends to break up. You should break up.
You can't do that. It's like, it has to be coming from inside of you. And so I would say, if somebody said that to me, I guess there's a reason why you're asking the question, right? So I would sit with that and meditate on that.
Wow.
And I would every day ask myself, am I happy doing what I'm doing? Am I happy? And is there a way for me to do something maybe slightly different that might make me even happier?
Yeah.
And follow that.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Can we do this again? Do this again?
We can do it once a month.
Let's do this again.
We can do it once a month. I love it. I love doing this.
Thank you all for watching. And we're going to do this again.
We're going to do it again. Ask us any questions we didn't answer today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye.
You're so fucking good.
You're so fucking good.
Did we cut? We keep that. We can keep that.